Hi. And hi, everybody. Thank you for coming out on a
Thursday.
Yeah.
Truly had to ask. Okay. Thank you for coming out on a Thursday evening. For those who are affiliated with the university, I mean, this is where we are. You know, it's summertime too, so I also thank you for that. But it's a wonderful occasion to be here for this lovely book. I've got my notes highlighted there, but there you are. Woo. Right? Yes. Congratulations. And I realized I just noticed you matched the cover. I just got it.
Yeah.
Okay. I love this for us.
Yes. Branding.
Congratulations on the book. Thank you for writing it. And I want to say a couple of words, and then we're going to have a conversation, and we wanted to leave plenty of time for Q&A. I promised the team, as the hometown girl, I had a few privileges here. And I told her when we talked about the event, I was like, oh, you don't have to worry about the Flyleaf audience. I said, these are not shy. I said, we do not have to do a whole lot of work for the Q&A. And in fact, we want to get there as efficiently as possible. That is what I said. Looking around this room, I feel like that is accurate. Yeah. So we want to try to get you there as quickly as possible. A couple of reasons why I was happy and thrilled to do this with you this evening is, you know, we can, whatever euphemism you want for right now, you know. These days, these times, this moment, you know, all this stuff we say at work because nobody wants to actually say the things. So whatever it is you want to call today, right now, our authoritarian slide is what I like to say, but if one says that apparently too much, people start to judge you harshly. But then I was like, oh, but I'm an instigator, so it's fine. I thought that was okay, right? I spent part of the day today with some folks at the 19th news organization, and we were talking about, your book came up because we were talking about the occasion of the 250th anniversary, of course, of the country, and the experience of being a Black woman in this moment, right? And I said to them, I was like, I ain't got nothing to say. They wanted like, I was like, I got nothing. But you did have something to say. So thank you very much for that. This book is part a diagnosis, right, of electoral politics, our understanding of how change happens in our flawed, but the system we've got, political machine, which I really appreciate you being quite honest too about the flaws of both the two-party system, which we're gonna get to that, but how we maybe maximize or optimize, or maybe even, I'm trying to say, exploit some of the fractures in that system, right, to make meaningful change. It seemed like a good moment to be talking about that. So there's a diagnosis of this book, which I think is very lovely. But the part that I was most excited about, that I think in particular this audience is gonna be really excited about, are the prescriptions. So I saw a funny meme, Instagram reel or TikTok or something recently where they were making fun of the last chapters in like serious books.
Yes,
Did you see
I
this?
I started crying actually.
And like you read this serious book and then it's the final chapter that's supposed to give you hope, and the guy's reading is like, and good luck. Like that's usually where we get at the end of these things. But you didn't. Yeah. You didn't. And in fact, I got the feeling reading your final chapter that you could have kept going.
Yeah.
And in this moment where I feel like there's a lot of attention to be captured, sometimes a little money to be made, being the person with the catchy diagnosis.
That's right.
But very little meaningful prescription.
Yeah.
That actually one of my favorite things about this book was the final chapter.
Yeah.
And that does not often happen in this genre. So I also want to thank you very much for that. And then we want to spend some time on that. Okay, so let's start with why instigate? You know, I'm a good Southern girl, as you know too. And when we say that you're instigating, it can mean all kinds of things.
Yeah.
All right, you over there instigating. Look at you. But also, you instigate.
Yes.
Why the instigators?
So I was doing that thing where I'm sure as writers, you would probably know, you're going through the dictionary, you're thinking of words, I'm debating with my agent and my editor, what's the title gonna be? And I knew it had to be something that symbolized vanguard, forefront, leading, and you know, all of these words. I love Vanguard with, you know, Martha Jones's book, right?
I know the good Martha Jones. If you don't know that one,
yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, what can really be like action, describe, and then I came across it, instigator. And yes, it has been weaponized and used when it's talking about people who are being antagonists in protest or marches, weaponized against people of color, especially Black people. But it really, at the end of the day, when you look at the definition, it means somebody who initiates or starts something for change. And so that is a through line for all of the women and non-binary folks that I write about.
Yep. So one of the arguments that you make in the book, which obviously, you didn't need to sell it to me, but that historically and contemporaneously, Black women have initiated political action within a system that does not usually want their act, or at least they don't want it from them, right? Yeah. And so can you talk to us a little bit, we can certainly think historically, but my mind, like so many others I'm thinking about right now, there's a cost also, however, to instigating, which I think I'm feeling very concretely, right? I look around, so many of my peers and my colleagues over the last, 2 or 3 years, Black women who built institutions and structures and movements. Marginalized is too, I think, soft of a word, have been demonized, excised, right? Punished. Yeah. Right? Can we talk a little bit about the cost of instigating it? Is it worth it? Is it worth it?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you asked everyone that I wrote that was a historical figure, and even the ones that I write who are still doing it today, they would all say yes, even knowing, and I was just listening to something from another author, Kimi Dahl, and she was a terrible strength about mostly Black women's health. But one of the videos she just recently made was, there's been some correlation between if women suppress their emotions, especially anger, it contributes to fibroids.
I think I saw her say that. Yeah. I was like, I don't need this information.
I did the same thing. I just was like, I used to joke with a friend. I was like, I definitely have a Trump fibroid right now.
Yes.
Like, oh my God.
The visual of a Trump fibroid. Thank you. I will have that in my mind. Yeah.
So, yes. So I think of it, I think of Fannie Lou Hamer and the fact that her life was much shorter than it would have been because of everything that, one, just being a farmer and a sharecropper, but then also the literal beating she took. I think of the folks in 2020 who went out to protest in 2014 in Ferguson, all of the years in between those times. And, tear gas had, bullets in their rubber pellets that they were using in 2020. Still the injuries from that, the recovery from that. And, I think when they say it's not worth it is when they see everything that they were doing. Nothing happened. But I think when they see incremental change, some change, that's how they keep at it. That's certainly for me when I was writing the book and I was thinking about the things that kept me going every time I'd see something that I was just like, F this noise. Because I felt like I was just guided by something that was a little higher than myself. I think now though, knowing what we have, the information we have on health and mental health specifically and how it affects our physical health and the literal wearing, especially for Black people, I'm like, well, I think we all now, as current activists, are like, how do we take care of ourselves also in doing the work? Because we know a lot of our ancestors were not able to do the same.
I look at every time, I feel like people who do this work around, it's like just peerage, general peerage within 10 or so years of that, I don't know. And it's also maybe just part of getting old, but I feel like we are dying sooner, right? I can look at so many people from the 2020 protests and they are gone, but the consequence you're saying of suppressing it would be just as bad.
Yeah.
So this is the power of instigating.
Yeah.
Is that or the Trump fibroid?
Yeah, I mean, that's the Trump fibroid.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean,
those are our options.
yeah, I mean, now, and I try to be more mindful about, like, I don't have to, you know, when I was doing the work when I was younger, I was, especially when you're in your 20s, you're like, what is sleep?
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah.
I would just keep going. I was like, okay, I'm going to burn out. You know, there was somebody, I remember on Twitter, rest in peace, who said, you know, that he had been working around the clock, and then something had, like, he felt literally something like click in his brain, and he just couldn't do work anymore. And so his doctor was like, okay, you're gonna have to, like, you literally had something just break in your brain, basically, the thing that helps you process stuff. So you just need to rest. And then he's like, you might not even be back to 100%, you know? And so I keep that in mind all right, like, take that time with your family, take that rest. Because especially now, the work's gonna be, well, it's gonna be a lot longer and a lot harder than I think many of us thought.
So let's talk about that then.
Yeah.
The right now, the harder, longer work. That is before us. I think everybody was on a different stage of, you know, grief, denial, acceptance of where we are. And I can get frustrated sometimes because everybody here, let's hear it and get to acceptance. Right? I feel, however, that we're coming close to this finally, the moment where, okay, people of like minds with me are finally all close to being on one accord of acceptance. This is someone pointed out to me last week, Atima, that Donald Trump has either been president or been, you know, former president, been in for almost a decade. Yeah, that's how it did me. I thought it had been like 4 years. It's been a decade of living in like a sort of suspended state, right? And that is wearing. And so I was like, okay, we can get everybody to acceptance. I feel like we're close now. Everybody kind of accepts this is maybe not an anomaly, right? This is the here and the now. As a person who does this for a living, and we're in 2026, you know what everybody wants to talk about. Midterms, by which they really are talking about, of course, the next presidential election. This is how we think. But how are you thinking about right now, and what are you able to determine what is most important for us to be doing at any given time? Because I feel completely overwhelmed by the priorities of right now. Okay, we've all gotten some general acceptance.
Yeah.
All right. Now, when you look out with your eye, you start the book out by saying, you know, usually you can predict what's going to happen by the end of the night. You don't even need to watch returns, right? Because you've got friends, you understand the electoral map and all of that. So help us see the vision of what you think is important right now.
Yeah. What I think is important right now is how do we respond in this moment to what happened with the Voting Rights Act? How do we organize around that? How do we, ensure folks are actually able to access the ballot and it's not diluted, even if they do access the ballot? It's so funny because I said this about Roe in the book. Like, I think a lot of folks who work in the voting rights space knew this moment was coming. Like, I saw it up on the docket and I was like, well, okay. Yeah. Here we go. And I'm like, I was at a movement conference in April. I'm hearing Black and brown led organizations talking about the fact that the funding is still slow. And then these are the organizations that are doing a lot of the work on the ground. Along with some, and so somebody said, okay, we're sitting in a room with all of the progressive organizations, Black, white, brown led, whatever. And it's like, if the white led organizations are complaining with money, like what, we're, in poverty situation. And that's not great because the other side didn't sleep. They've not slept. They've not stopped funding. And that, my husband likes to call it the Biden interregnum. That we had.
I like that.
And when he says that, we're like, Stephen Miller was getting all this money to essentially pull together what became Project 2025. They were getting folks in place. They were doing all the strategy. And, when it would have seemed that in the first 4 years that that would have been the case. But I feel like there was a lot of funding, there was a lot of sort of rage giving, all of that. And then there was all of the guilt giving in 2020, 2022, and it's just gone down and it's not really come back at those same levels. And we're really good at, okay, we got our people in office, we're solid. It's like, no, we're not. Democracy is a continued thing.
So I care a lot about the South for reasons I've written about and talked about ad nauseum. One of the things that I find fascinating, I'm hoping you can tell me I'm wrong, by the way, is what I'm about to tell you. So my meeting rooms are probably not quite as dense as yours, but the people that I know who do any kind of on the ground organizing, when they talk about this moment too of how funding has dried up, how hard it is to capture people's attention, like we're angry, but they can't get the sustained attention, right? They can't convert that to participation, into attention. One of the things that they talk about is this sort of, I don't know, like you said, if the white organizations are struggling, all the others are really struggling, but if other white organizations are struggling, Southern focused organizations may as well be non-existent.
Yeah.
So when you talk about the Voting Rights Act, that is an attack really on the Southern vote. I mean, that's a deeply Southern problem. Please tell me I'm wrong and I just am missing it because I don't get invited to the room. Is anybody? Okay.
I was like, I mean, it's not like nobody's doing anything.
No, not nobody. I mean, but like, where are we? We know, like you said, people like yourself who know such things.
Yeah.
We on the docket. I mean, I don't even know, but I knew I was on the docket. This is, Robert's court. He's been salivating, but he created this moment. He's been salivating for 30 years. So yeah, we knew. It's like you said, it was like Roe. We knew what was happening. But then we know this is about the South. Where is funding in the South? Where is the attention on the South? Is anybody organizing and thinking about a true Southern investment strategy in the people and in the infrastructure?
Yeah. Well, I think of the organizations that live and work in the South. Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. I feel like, and this is, I had a conversation with one organization that has states that they focus on in the South, and they were spending the first half of this year trying to figure out funding. And of course they knew this VRA case was going to happen, similar to all the repro organizations with Roe and what happened there. And so, they're like, I think funding is finally being released. A lot of those national organizations, a lot of the folks who would be responsible for funding those organizations went down to Montgomery and Selma to reset. And, I certainly have heard that money is slowly moving, but I'm like, all right, I mean, again, should have been moving sooner.
Yeah.
So, and then there's like so many different issues. There's like, one is like the resources to do all of the now defense work. But then there's also what's happening as these maps are getting redrawn in real time. And, like members of Congress, like now fighting amongst each other for districts, and with the implication of Black electeds are now losing the seats that they held. So, I haven't seen anything. The solution that I've seen structurally from the Democrats has been, all right, we do this redistricting game. We get into it.
Right.
As we did in Virginia, where I grew up, and got screwed by our state Supreme Court.
Yep. That one was a hard one.
That one was a hard one, yeah.
Yeah. I think it was the whiplash of, celebrating the week before. Like, okay, this is what happens when you make a compromise on, I will say, you don't need to say it because it's home for you. But like you make a compromise on a very centrist candidate like your governor, in part because you think, okay, but she'll make the hard decision on at least one major thing. And we thought, oh, that was the payoff, right? Yeah, they put, and we won. And I mean, within 24 hours, it felt like, or whatever, it was like the whiplash of losing so quickly. Anyway, that one was a hard one.
That one was, because I was like literally at a conference with all our moving folks, like, thank you.
Yeah.
Like, Virginia's so great. It's like, get up, like, and then boom, 2 days later. So yeah, their solution is that, and I don't not think we should be doing that. But the problem is you're going to be drawing in the states where we can and have the control to do that. A lot of them aren't where most Black and brown people live.
Gotcha.
So we're getting more white elected officials who might be more moderate, not be as liberal, and that still lends to the disappearing of Black and brown political power. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, this is an upbeat chat. Thank you very much. It was lovely having you. Okay. So I have to take an opportunity for someone who has worked in and around the Democratic machine. The last week and a half, there has been a lot of discussion about, the forensic accounting of what went wrong, right? The DNC finally released deeply troubled.
Is not finished.
Not finished. Honestly, I thought they'd been joking about it, but I thought they were.
No, they
seriously.
Really
I thought they were overstating.
No,
I really did. When he was like, "Oh, it's messy," I thought they were playing, political words and things.
No, they were annotated. Yeah.
Yeah, that was embarrassing.
It was still like a Google Doc marked up.
Yeah. No, have y'all seen it?
Yeah. But remember.
Yeah. No. Go ahead. We're family here.
Remember, it was leaked first.
Yes.
Intentionally released.
Yes.
Right. They wanted to hold on.
Yeah.
And keep it locked as long as it could.
All right, and so finally just had to say, fine, y'all win. Yeah. You wanted it, you got it. It was worse than we even thought.
Yeah.
Not really sure it told us much of anything, other than, some points about the division between, Biden's administration and Harris's campaign, which I think we knew, but it did put a finer point on it, to be fair. Is there anything salvageable from that report that we didn't know that is politically useful? And do we need to keep having the conversation about what went wrong? Like, is it politically salient to understand what went wrong there for us to do what we need to do now?
I think there's a lot of folks, especially that I know of DNC members who are defensive, and they're like, listen, we've got all of these things on fire that we need to deal with in the moment. And I'm like, sure, but how do we do what we need to do now and not repeat any of the mistakes we made in the past? And that's why people have wanted to see it. And I think, it's funny because I actually sat in on a briefing where the guy, Paul Rivera, who did some work on it, talked about some of the additional things that he saw. And one of the things that he saw in his research was certainly our habit of not really doing any serious voter engagement until we get to the fall.
Yep. That's what I hear here in the state all the time. Some of my friends, I hear that all the time.
Like, it's like, it was just like, I was like, what? It was this graph he made, and it was like, down, and then I'll, like in September, and I'm like, and meanwhile,
and the last week in November, gone. Yeah, that's what my friends here say. That's right,
gone. Yeah. And so it's and some people don't even see it in some of their neighborhoods, right? So saw that our door knocking in comparison to our calls and our texts, like our door knocking was really down. Our calls and texts were up, and texts were great in 2020. Like,
yes, we did not pivot well to the decline of the cell phone.
Yeah,
right? I feel like everybody got really confident because Obama had innovated. Remember how excited we were about the internet back in the day? Y'all remember that?
Yeah.
Bless our sweet hearts. We were so excited.
I actually liked the internet once when it was just it was like a time.
I was pro internet. Wrongly. Yeah, but we got very confident about Obama had built this new machine, right? And digital engagement and all of that. But then, our phones became a tether. We got annoyed with the phone. You can't get people on the cell phone. And we never came back.
Never really came back. And we really leaned on, I remember talking to tons of folks after 2020 who were trying to recruit volunteers. And I said, okay, we're recruiting for calls. And they said, yeah, we get people for texts. And I'm like, I get it. Nobody wants to really deal with people on the phone, but it's like, or deal with like, who are you voting for, or get hung up on or whatever, but literally the most effective, still doors, face-to-face conversations, then phones, and like texts are like third or fourth, and yet we're overrepresented on the amount of texts we send out, be they fundraising or just, are you turning out to vote?
I just got one on the
yeah.
right before we came up
Yeah,
here,
we're getting to end of month. We're gonna you're gonna get a lot of those. So, but yeah. So it's when I saw that, I was like, okay, that's. I mean, for me doing the work, I was not surprised. Okay. Anybody who here in this room, you've done campaigns, you're like not surprised by that data. But then it's like, if we have that data, then okay, what are going to be the pledges to fix that, right? And yeah. No, I mean, it was like even a movement leader who in October, it was like October 24. She said, well, I got $100 million to do a whole bunch of stuff because she work kind of like a head of a donor table, and then move it to a bunch of different organizations. She's like, I got it in October. And I literally was like, look at the donors like, and October 24. WTF am I gonna do with this in October? Like, I could have used this in June. Like, and she's like, and really, and this, I said this a little bit in the book, but, she also in this talk reiterated that, by the time Kamala Harris accepted the nomination, like voting had already started. Yeah. So we were already behind.
Yeah. $100 million in October.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm still stuck on
No, I know. And she's like, oh, we figured out how to spend it, but like,
but that's not the same thing as like mobilizing.
I know.
It's like, what are you supposed to do?
You like usually, I mean, maybe you might if folks had those last minute GOTV operations, but usually what ends up happening is sometimes I'll get a phone call. I have tons of my friends who get phone call, like, can we do some live calls? Can we get up some digital ads? Can we get up TV? And like, okay, those are all useful, but if it's not also going into bodies on the ground,
that's
like
people to knock on doors is what you're saying.
To knock on doors, right? Because I used to run those canvas teams, and now I'm the person, like, I'm always talking to an organization. Do you have people on the ground?
Yep.
Because then if I'm like working on the creative and the assets for your digital campaign, then people are getting like a good surround sound, like of what's happening. They're turning on the TV, they're listening to the radio, they're talking to somebody at the door, and it finally sinks in.
Yeah.
But if I'm just doing digital and there's not been any touch or engagement to see how these people feel, how disenchanted or any of that. Yeah.
I walked away from your book much like I do reading the news, of just very I don't have a lot of faith in the national party's organizational structure for the political moment and what it's demanding of us, I guess is what I would say. Is that fair?
No, I mean, that's not, I understand why.
Okay. They just don't seem like the people for our time. That's all. I mean, the things you're saying to me, I'm not trying to be funny, but like, people know you have to knock on doors. I know that, and I don't even do this. And it's very, it's very disheartening.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, there is the DNC, and then they're responsible for all of our state party infrastructure.
Right.
And while Ken Martin is moving money to all these state parties to do more work, we still have a lot of folks who are doing campaigns, and they're not doing a lot of this stuff until later. I mean, when I was coming up in campaigns, the idea was just talk to the people who vote regularly. That was it. Like, people who vote the last 3 elections, the last 4 elections, talk to those folks. Which meant a whole swath of folks who didn't regularly turn out for elections, who only maybe voted in midterms, who only voted in the presidentials, were never getting talked to, who tend to look like you and I, this room, younger folks. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not sure then having the autopsy is doing us much good.
In its current form, no.
Okay. All right.
I mean, if there was more information on like, here are the things that we learned and here are the things that we are going to do, that would be useful. But that's not what this document is.
Yeah. Okay. Now, we've talked about the sort of the fracturing of campaign season, but as like fractured and maybe, incomplete as that is in between elections, it doesn't seem like we do much of anything at all. So I now want to switch to that. Like, what are we organizationally for people who care and are concerned in our move to act outside of preparing to vote, you know, in the month, 2 months before the election? What is it we are supposed to be doing, and what should we have been building right now between presidential election seasons?
I mean, I say this and it feels like common sense, but we are where we are because I guess folks didn't use the common sense or it wasn't obvious to them. But literally building in community, like literally finding out what's going on in your communities. Like you could be just doing voter registration drives. You could just be tabling and organizing folks around different issues that are happening in your community. That's a lot of the work that community organizations have picked up. And I have, read certainly that the Republican Party in certain places, I feel like that some of it happened in North Carolina, where they've had these community centers where they've, answered questions, done service work, all of that, in partnership with folks. Actually, and I want to say it was one of the Carolina organizations I was talking to with my work, who said, it's actually been easier when, because we're nonpartisan, even though all of us are personally very progressive and our politics of the organization are very progressive, Republicans have been like, oh yeah, you can come in our center and run a voter registration drive because it's a Black and brown led organization.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And so we're not doing that at the level that we should. We're not building relationship with community organizations. We're not, when those organizations go through and do the voter registration and do the listening tours and do the mobilizing around ballot initiatives, there isn't going in afterwards and saying, okay, let me connect the issues that you care about as to why you should vote with the Democratic Party.
That's the piece. I've got friends who vote, organize, across, this strip between, here in Greensboro, Burlington, High Point, Kernersville, and through Alamance County, which for us here would be, deeply red, but working class enough, I think enough economic inequality that there's always the hope you can peel off, voters on issues-based voting strategies, and people who between elections do exactly that. By the way, right? They can turn out people in Alamance County. I've got friends who say, I can turn out a couple thousand people for you in Burlington, right? North Carolina, for example. And they say when they do that, however, to your point, nobody is coming behind them from the Democratic Party machine at the state or national level to convert that into anything.
Yeah.
Is this the story nationwide? Okay,
yeah.
The other side is connecting that quite well.
Yeah. I mean,
what does it look like on the other side? I actually almost don't even really want to know because what does it look like on the other side? What does their machine look like?
Well, I mean, when you have Republican Party willing to, say, hey, come here, we'll do you can use our space for voter registration or organizing activities. They're going to, the churches. They use all the different exploiting parts. They now, because social media is the beast that it is, we're now in the days that we don't like the internet as much. And, they're going and literally, okay, what different talk shows and that's in different communities, different radio shows that they can be on and talk about issues, but turned around. That's how the manosphere kind of really expanded the way it is. They're kind of hitting all the points of media, the community stuff, going in the churches, and they're not competing. I mean, I was talking to somebody who literally said, and this was when she worked for the party and she was in charge of Black media, and she said, the number of times I had to convince them that yes, you need to spend on Black radio. Yes, you do. It's not just the olds who listen to Black radio. There's still a seismic 80-something%. Just turn it on, whether it's a show or background noise, music, and we're not there. But, you know, they're also, perfect example, Florida. There's no reason that we should be losing Florida. You know, Andrew Gillum almost won. And he wasn't a perfect candidate, like, and he almost won. And one of the things that I remember them talking about, like, with Florida, was all of the different sort of, like, populations. There was an assumption from a previous senator, Bob Nelson, when he was at some briefing. It's not even like a tell-all here. This is like something that was written in a magazine. I remember being so frustrated, I threw it across the room. But he thought it was a Senate briefing, they were getting a briefing on Latino voters. He says, I don't need to be there because I have Cubans, and Cubans don't vote for Democrats. So I was like, there are Venezuelans, there are Ecuadorians, there are
Puerto
Ricans.
Yeah.
There are just so many different constituencies who are informed by different politics. Dominican Republic, and we were just leaving him on the table because he still thought from like the 80s or the 70s it was the Cubans. And on top of that, now, like, there's all this, and I know there's like lots of my like colleagues who are doing the Latino organizing are like, you know, we got these different constituencies, you can be on these different radios, they have their, you know, WhatsApp, they've got the different ways that they talk to each other on top of just the door knocking, and we're not there. But guess who is? Yeah.
So what is that? Is that just, what is that, hubris on our side? You talked about like just old, outdated frameworks for understanding the electoral landscape. You know, I don't like to get into like generational warfare, but are we just talking about here that people have just been so far removed?
Yeah, in the case of Bob Nelson, I don't know why there wasn't like young staff who said, you don't get your butt back into that briefing, like there are Latinos on the table you have not talked to, like different constituents, so it's a lot of not understood. There's a lot of folks especially I'm seeing it's better now with some of the Black-led civil rights organizations, but even sort of the, you know, when stuff happened with dogs in Haiti and Springfield, Ohio.
In Springfield,
you know, there was sort of this like, okay, this is like an immigration issue, but there wasn't as much mobilizing. I think NAACP put some stuff out, but
that's also racism, that xenophobia. These things go together, is what you're saying.
Right. And sort of an assumption from some folks that when they're talking about Black voters, they're also like, it's urban. Right. Or, it's, they're just starting to accept that we live in the suburbs. Like, their mind is not fully wrapped around the fact that there are like a lot of Black people in rural areas.
Much less that immigration also impacts Black people.
Right. You know, and so, all right, when we're going to places like Florida, when we're going to places like New York, when we're going to places, honestly, Atlanta, the number of like Nigerians and Jamaicans I know.
I'll share something that I read. There's data. I read it for the first time about a year ago, and I said it to someone, a Politico, like, this is what they do for a living, and it kind of snorted derisively, like, she misunderstood, or, you know, she's losing her mind, which, to be fair, happens to me a lot, so that part was okay. I was used to that part, but this is what I said to them, that they just could not accept, like, their mental framework just couldn't accept. There is data, just basic demographic data that said in most what we think of as Black urban communities, the Atlanta's, chocolate cities, Atlanta, DC, that we are close to being almost 50% of those Black populations being immigrants, Black ethnics.
That sounds all right.
Black immigrants. And I said this, and so I was like, that's a fundamental change in like the Black vote. He looked at me and went, and I went, you do demography, and you can't believe it.
Oh, wow.
You know what I mean? So we're just running up against, the fastest growing Black population in this country are Black ethnic immigrants.
Yeah. Right. And like the thing that was like amazing to me also when I was reading was that, all right, so they're saying the under 45s are this group of younger Black folks who are like less enchanted with the Democratic Party, less feeling politically like aligned the way their elders did, who did the Voting Rights Act, all of that. But part of it is like, yeah, they're like, I don't have this emotional attachment. But there's the other reason is because there are folks who are my generation, a little bit younger, whose parents are immigrants, and so our understanding, especially because we're not very good at teaching a shared history, we're banning it now. So they don't have any emotional tie to that movement, and then number two, like,
it's not your grandma.
It's not your grandma.
That's
right. Yeah, like, for me, like, my grandma was, in East Africa, Uganda. So it's like, but for me, like, my parents were very good about telling me about the history and were very Pan-Africanist in their beliefs, but not everybody gets that.
No. And in fact, I would probably say, I think it's safe to say most don't.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of incentive to not know that.
Yeah.
That's right. To not tell people that story, because the point is for there not to be solidarity.
Yeah.
Right? So you don't tell that story. And you do mention that, so I picked up on that because I thought it was a wonderful thing for you to both say about your parents and for them to have inculcated in you. All right, so this gives me a wonderful opportunity, and then I hope y'all getting your questions ready, because after this we're going to turn to Q&A. This gives me an opportunity, and in a perfect place for me to ask you something that in your list of prescriptions, I want you to know there's a whole list of them, and it's just not a bulleted list. You talk about each one, the limitations, but you do this anyway, and the one that I had to highlight that I'm going to ask you about, I'm just going to ask it of you the way I wrote it. Two-party system, go.
I was like, okay, I get it. Like, we have this like third party conversation.
Yes.
All the time. Would we be a better off country if we had like multiple different political parties? And yes, structurally, it's kind of the Electoral College favors duopoly. We right now have these kind of winner takes all situations in congressional districts. We don't have multiple districts. Like, if we have like congressional district 3, we don't have 3A, 3B, 3C. Now that could be changed by a Congress, but I don't really see Congress.
This Congress ain't been to work in
They ain't been to work in a while.
I don't even know.
And then when they are, they're not exactly interested in doing anything that jeopardizes themselves. So, all right. So what do we do? Like, you get engaged. If you are interested in electoral politics, I say this to my folks, I don't want to do it. Okay, if you don't want to do electoral politics, one, don't complain to me and then say you don't want to do electoral politics, right? Like, just don't. But if you are like, all right, I'm over this, find a way to get engaged in your local party. Find a way to get engaged in your state party. I say this, and I was thinking about this, especially from our conversation yesterday. In 2016, with all of the Bernie and Hillary stuff, there was like so much great energy in the room at the state party convention that I was at for the Virginia Democrats. And it was across the country. A lot of fights, but a lot of great energy. A lot of folks who were very upset their guy didn't get the nomination, literally, and this was even a colleague of mine as a Bernie delegate, just packed up their toys and went home. Like, just literally, like, all of that energy just like left the room. And I'm like, that's not how you make change. And, I will say they were mostly of the non-melanated persuasion. Like, I was like, y'all, our country wouldn't have gotten this. We wouldn't have had a Voting Rights Act. We wouldn't have gotten, if Black people were like, all right, well, they don't, Black people would still be enslaved, at some point, right? Like, all of these different fights that we can think of, what if they had given up after Reconstruction ended, right? And so I say to folks, find a way, find different things that you can do to get engaged. If Fannie Lou Hamer could sit before the Democratic National Convention Credentials Committee, 1964, and say, this is what I endured to get the vote. She was beaten for hours overnight, sexually assaulted. So were many of her other colleagues who were doing this work. And she kept going and she kept pushing until she was seated at, the convention. It was a multiracial delegation that was seated in convention in 68, didn't happen in 64. But what if she just given up? Like, okay, like your guy didn't win. You're frustrated with the party policies. I got involved in the Democratic Party when, like, you couldn't say abortion without everybody being like, shh, like, at all. It was like third rail of politics. Don't talk about it. Like, it was revolutionary to say, like, I believe in a woman's right to choose an abortion. And now, like, you honestly can't even be successful as a candidate if you don't also say not only that, but I also believe that people's federally funded health insurance should cover abortion now. Like, we should repeal the Hyde Amendment. And we got there because people around the country who had shared my politics, pro-choice organizations, got involved in the party infrastructure war. They're pushing state platform, getting the right candidates elected. Like, if they were not the right candidate and they couldn't find somebody, they ran themselves. It is building consistently. And so I say that, and I say all this with like a lot of caveats. I get it. You're like, I don't want to, and I say this in the book. You don't want to deal with those corporate mother effers. Like, you're like, I'm over it. Like, I get it. I get it. But I just think we lose more by sitting out because we can create a party that then leads to a lot more change if we think about it that way.
All right. Instigate.
Point taken. All right, everybody. It's your turn. Any questions out there? I'm gonna go here first and then you be. Hi there in the back, yes.
Oh, yeah. So coming back to the topic about, I think it's, to me, I'm thinking about like connection and common ground. And there's a couple of examples that I think, because you guys are talking about going out and talking to people in their homes. And there's a couple of cases that I think are really very interesting. One is someone called Kate Kent. She goes by Kate Kentman. I can't remember her name. She actually ran as a Republican.
Yeah, because they were running unopposed. That's right. She said, well, then I'll just show up. Yeah.
And so she had people going out as part of her crew, basically. And they weren't going out the way you usually go. They were going out and they were contacting people, and then they would send them like Valentine's or baking them a cake. And then they just kept contact with them. And eventually, when we got closer to the actual election, people said, who's that person? I better contact them. So it was very effective in building connections with people. And they had like, I think, 18% rate of actually getting people involved. Another one that I'm aware of is it's a group that's basically they're going out and they're not actually doing the usual type of discussions with people. It's like, well, what's bothering you? What's really bothering you? How's your health? How's your your housing or things like that. So it's making connections. Anyway, I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that as opposed to to try to build community and build connections. And I haven't read your book yet, by the way. I did get it.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, I definitely talk at length about it and the importance of investing in organizations and people who will do that work. Because it's a lot easier to move somebody who you built a connection with, than one of the more effective, and it was like, I don't know who innovated it specifically, but I think it's just been a thing that's happened, and we start giving it like a more fancy name, but sort of the person to person, like texting folks in your circle. Yeah.
When everybody was supposed to be like, you're supposed to be an ambassador, text your 5 people, show them. Yeah.
I mean, that is just a very simple way of just building connections and finding community. People who know you are more likely to move or be influenced by what you said or your opinions because they know you, right? Like, not because, this person that they might like is an elected official, but they might be skeptical of because they're skeptical of the political process. So, yeah.
All right. So I got like 90 things that I would like to. I'm going to narrow it down to 2. because I don't want to get my ass beat by the good doctor.
You got it.
So, as far as organizations go, and I think this is really crucial, about doing stuff in between elections. North Carolina is blessed with a specific organization, the A. Philip Randolph Institute, that consistently does a ton of work, not just in election cycles, but in between election cycles as far as education goes. And then when you're talking about voter security work and voter registration, they're basically peerless to anybody. In the 2024 cycle, they're responsible for something like 27% of all voter registrations in the state. And so, like, I think that's really crucial, but it also comes from a very specific place, and it comes from the fact that it has a very clear and core identity to it because it is a constituency group of the AFL-CIO. Right. So it has a very solid rooting in working class politics. Which brings me to my second point. As far as canvassing goes, everything you talked about as far as being late to the party, people like ramping up way too late, I have done every single labor coordinated campaign in this state since 2014. This cycle was the first time that we had any kind of serious door knocking take place in May. And not just that, we also shifted how we talk on the doors. We were actually talking to people and getting their opinions first. Because part of the problem is when people are canvassing, you are either identifying folks and then you're GOTV, and there has been a declining amount of what are called persuasion knocks in every single sort of canvassing campaign and programming. And it is part of the reason why, like, you just aren't figuring out how to move people. It's that issue in 2024 that I personally ran into a ton when I was knocking for labor on the doors. Like, we had people who were solidly on board with everything, but because of stuff that happened surrounding Gaza and the genocide there, they're like, I'm not going to go vote. And fortunately, we had a couple of other races that we could talk about, specifically the labor commissioner race, where an actual sitting union member, now currently the president of the North Carolina AFL-CIO, good dude, was running for labor commissioner, and that's a really crucial job for workplace safety. So who would you want to hire, right? The guy who's lived through a couple of workplace safety incidences, or the guy who's a corporate lawyer who covers for them? Easy thing to say on the doors, but like talking about the top of the ticket, like, there was a lot of damage done by the National Party on policy that we could not make up on the doors, and that's a really crucial issue.
So he's saying that we have seen an improvement, like the on the ground game knocking. Although I will just say, I think that a lot of people that I talk to still think that there's a lot of still left there.
There's tons there.
But you also bring up this point that I think is worth pointing out. So when you talk about labor unions, especially in the South, which is a long, complicated, important history, one of the things that it does highlight is something that you point out, which is, but those are people who are paid to go knock. And like, where is the infrastructure? Like, there's just a difference between asking people to do that. I think one of the reasons why, like, getting somebody to sign up to send 5 texts is easier than getting somebody to knock on the doors, because you can send texts from the car or, or whatever it is. Like, the other side to my mind, and it doesn't look like this is just purely about money. Like, we are in the Democrats and the Republicans and the few competitive races that are left across the country, like, they're pouring money into it. How much was it in that small Kentucky race, Massey's race? I think they said they ended up spending the most that had ever been spent, whatever it was, like, I don't know, $50 million, right? Yeah, so, like, we're not necessarily always talking about a shortage of money, because sometimes the Dems are like, well, the right has all the billionaires. Yeah. But we can pour all this money into these, small competitive. But, like, where is the infrastructure to do exactly that? To pay people to go knock and have the conversation.
Is that your question?
I want to say something about A. Philip Randolph, because what tends to happen, what has happened historically, is larger predominantly white-run organizations get the money and dole it out to the APRs, to the A. Philip Randolphs, you know, to Black Alliance, right? Rarely are they at the table getting directly the larger pot of money. So they're asked to do a whole lot with, relatively speaking, what may not appear to be very little to them at that time. Yeah. But in the larger scheme of things, I know that's how it happens. It's
very small. I think that's small. Yeah, you mentioned in the book that's a national story.
And that's what I was going to ask. I haven't read the book. We'll get it, and I'm on my way to the beach for my birthday, and I will take that.
Happy birthday!
Happy birthday! But yeah, you talk about that is a national story.
It's a national story, and then also I'm glad you evoked the spirit of and the story of Fannie Lou Hamer. The difference I see between that time and now, there are two differences. One, what are we going to do about all of these unaffiliated registered voters?
Who are growing, by the way. That is the fastest part of the
electorate. You didn't have that at that particular time.
Right.
You really did have that bifurcated political structure, Democrats and Republicans during that particular time. Yeah. And so that's something we have to deal with. I was registered Democrat and ran for office, and then saw I didn't switch because I lost. I knew that was probably going to be the outcome because I ran against a 30-year incumbent white male, a lot of money, a lot of resources thrown behind that race. But I switched because I got to look behind the curtain. Right. I got to see behind the curtain, and I was thinking, dang, you know, really our role in this party is labor. Now we can look and point to a few. We can point to a few, you know, some exceptions where. But I think about Sherry Beasley, and she and I talk about this sometimes behind the scene. She was just as frustrated about what was happening as well, about why they were waiting so late to really put money behind her. The whole focus was get Roy in the governor's seat, get Roy in the governor's seat, and down ticket. Jessica lost at that time for labor. Sherry Beasley lost, and so right. And so,
but then comparison, like Cunningham, a year prior, made more money. I mean, raised more money, got more money easily.
No, I understand.
Yeah, no, just saying, like, by compare, you know, that's.
So that's one thing that I'm struggling with is, you know, what are we doing? How do we bake in the unaffiliated voters that oftentimes, you know, we were getting Democratic literature. Largely because my husband still is a Democrat, registered Democrat. I was getting a stink load of Republican literature as an unaffiliated.
Right. That is interesting.
Right. Yeah. And so I'm on how I ended up on these, you know, I get messages, come to the, you know, Center for Progress, or whatever. And they're having something next week or this week. So, I mean, how are Black women in particular, the ones who have been instigators, but have not been invited to the seat of leadership and decision making in the party at the top to kind of help the strategy be more effective in our communities? What do we do with that? I hear what you say, you know, you keep doing it, Fannie Lou, they didn't give up. And so these are kind of different times because we have that history. Yeah. And you're like, well, damn, is it ever going to switch or shift?
I mean, in some ways it has shifted, right? It is like, in some ways, I would say, and also like, okay, it's like sort of the doom and gloom of now, but also there have been people who are in the room. Like one of the women that I write about in the book, in the current moment, Maya Rupert, a good friend of mine, managed Leon Castro's presidential campaign. And she did things differently. You know, instead of focusing on Iowa and New Hampshire.
But that got them in a lot of trouble.
It did.
Yeah.
It did. But, I was going to say, but also like, you know, she had a candidate, and here was the thing, because we had a very competitive presidential primary in 2020, which we're going to have coming into 28. Yeah. there was an opportunity to hire not the usual suspects for presidential campaigns. You saw the most people of color managing presidential campaigns. Warren had Rhonda Lau is now at DNC. He was her campaign manager, Asian American man. You had an African American man managing Cory Booker's campaign. All these people who had never cut their teeth on presidential campaigns. Usually it's a very insular world. When you start moving up these people who have these different experiences, background, organizing, training, that because you open up the opportunity, then that's when that happens. And so part of what I write about in this book is that there needs to be more concerted effort, and I talk about how to do that in making sure more of us are at the table as campaign staff, as consultants. I mean, what $1 billion with Harris's campaign,
right.
But a fraction, a hair gone to Black and brown consultants.
I gotta tell you, that burned a lot of bridges with a lot of people I know.
Yeah.
Because when you saw those big numbers reported in the news and paper, and if you were doing anything on the ground, you knew you hadn't seen a lick of it. There's still a lot of hurt feelings about that. Okay, But if I want to say, I will say one thing I do hear you saying that I think is a good takeaway, which is that when we have these moments, I'm thinking increasingly, I'm doing a lot of reading right now, and everybody's like, we have to exploit the fractures. Whenever you see a splintering or a fracturing of like the rights coalition or of the electoral system, right, you gotta be prepared, you gotta exploit it. And what I hear you saying there is when you have a very competitive presidential primary coming up, it could be a good time to exploit the temporary expansion then of the party, right? There might be more opportunities, and people who are inclined to participate, this might be a good time for them to be insinuating themselves.
And when you have opportunities, like when leadership changes, and I'll use the North Carolina Democratic Party, they, Anderson and Clayton took over, but some of the folks who are in leadership, and I write about him in the book, they had always seen the same crop of white, good old boy consultants, consulted the party, and they put in a clause that was, all right, we're gonna have a certain number of consultants who are Black and brown, there will be a competitive process. But that was because, there was this leadership change, and folks who had pushed for that leadership change to happen within the party, and also folks who are there at the table who've done the work, who are Black and brown, who are ready to take advantage of that fracture of like, all right, we're all in this sort of just, what do we do now? Where do we go from here?
If there's anything that is a slightly hopeful for me these days, it is that actually I think the things that are the frustrating things, the fact that there are more unaffiliated voters, that it is harder to get people to answer their phone, that there is less social trust, actually might be opportunities, however, for the people who are willing to
do something different.
Go right,
Do you think candidates matter? I've gotten more involved in local politics, and I'm always surprised by people who are in politics who don't seem very curious about data, like you talked about. I'm a data person, so I'm like, am I skewed?
Like, why wouldn't you read the chart?
We're weird.
Why would you do that?
Weird. Yeah.
And also who seem like they have the right ideas and they're really passionate about ideas, but they don't seem like they love the people. I don't know.
Oh,
so, I
there
don't know
are plenty of elected officials I know who don't like people.
Like, do we need?
Plenty.
Like, do we need different candidates, or is this just a structural problem where that's just how it beats you down, or that's what it filters for?
I mean, there's some people who really get involved in it, and honestly, they just don't like people. Like, I worked with one elected official. He was a really good legislator, passed really good stuff. He just hated talking to people. And he got elected in this special election. It was a smaller community. Less people turned out, and they're like, oh, okay, we know this guy because he's already been around and done the things, right? The nice thing I think with seeing all of this is, we're seeing energy again around the importance of local and state elections, and that is where most of the fight is going to be, and that is where our bench is going to come from. And so, yes, some people do get into the process and get really jaded very quickly, or get corrupted, right? Like, I sometimes have to remind myself, yes, right now we have a Congress that can literally manipulate things for their stockholder.
I was about to say, I think it's important to say that because you can get so down on the other side. I think it's important to name the fact there's just also a historical amount that what I was about to go say, an historical amount of corruption.
Right.
Corruption.
Yeah.
Right. State level included.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen, there's this great for the local folks that all of you follow, like Hometown Holler and Carolina Ford, but they've got a great crossover video where he talks about the level of known corruption in the North Carolina General Assembly.
Right.
That if you just want to get a party together this weekend and like have a good reason to drink.
There was like a joke. There was like a joke in the Virginia General Assembly. I remember there was one I really admired, and I said, you've served as a cabinet secretary, a respected local elected official. Why not GA? No, like literally, like laughed at me like this. No, and because you just go down there and it's just a bunch of like morons, and this was decades ago, but you're going to a bunch of morons who like let the lobbyists write their legislation for them because it's a citizen legislature and they only get paid $18,000 a year, and so. But I think that it is important. I mean, there's some structural things that can fix it, right? Like if we're actually paying our legislators what they need to live, we are good people who otherwise would not take themselves out of the process will run for office because they know they can do it while like making a living. Like I knew somebody who was like serving on our county board in my area, making like, I think it was 30 at the time, but he was married and he had 2 kids and a mortgage and all the things. So he was doing a great job. So he ended up, somebody had retired who was like their clerk of the clerk. That paid a real salary, like 6 figures. And they lived in Northern Virginia, which is much more expensive. So he ended up moving to that. But he had that opportunity to be able to do that and have the community recognition to like run and get that role. But there are a lot of people who take themselves out of it just for that. So there are structural things we can do to make it better, but also like, I mean, this is what I say, if you know really great people who should be serving in public office who actually love people, who actually get nerdy, they're like an Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez about policy, like they just get nerd out and you can tell. Like you should be recruiting them and encouraging them to run and supporting them when they run.
Wrap yourselves around them. And I also point out that when we don't pay people well, good people, that it also increases the odds of corruption. Because what happens is you're then right to be influenced. Yeah.
I think we have time for maybe one more question.
One more. Hello, that's you, ma'am.
Well, I want to, first of all, thank you so much for this effort. I did study your book, and I'm going to buy you one for your birthday. And I just want to, I appreciate you naming a lot of the things that you named. I feel like as Black women, who were 92% of the, I don't think that we get enough credit for the strategy that we bring forward, and I appreciate you naming that in the book. I think when you live under oppression, you're in a perpetual state of doing an analysis, a holistic analysis of what's going on, and I think history speaks to us being able to name that. But I also think that it is, I think 2 things. Number one, we really need to name in the room the war chest that the Democratic Party has for white men who come into this, and the labor that Black women do. In the case of Michelle and other people saying it's not your turn yet. We better hurry up and choose the lesser of 2 evils. Really and truly, I believe until we really interrogate white supremacy in the Democratic Party, we're going to continue to see people going to independent. I also think if we don't interrogate classism, it's an issue.
Hey, hello. I'm sorry for my favorite issue.
The matter is, those strategies that you outlined, SNCC was doing that in the 60s. They came into the community different from, as an organizer, I've been an organizer for 40 years. What I see the difference in organizing is that people come into the community with an agenda and a plan. SNCC came into the community and said, what do we need? Anderson Moore said, this is what we need. Fannie Lou Hamer said, this is the direction that we need to go in. And I think they embedded themselves in the community for a few years to really get to know the issues that people needed, the local people needed. That's what drove those numbers up in that voter registration drive. And so it was that power for Mondale and all those other people in Atlantic City that kept them out of the process. And as you said, Fannie Lou Hamer kept on pressing on. So I really think until we interrogate classism, sexism, and how we have historically been honest about treating Black women who have been the laborers, and it's still labor from enslavement.
Yeah.
You go ahead and get your people together, get these people to vote for me, and without really and really thinking about the strategy that Black women have brought to the table and the good things that they have. And anyway, I want to thank you for naming that. I want to thank you for the book, and it was a great facilitation, Tressie.
Oh, it means a lot to me that our strategic brilliance is acknowledged as such. That's why I take the opportunity to do it, because people don't always do it, and then they won't treat our work with the respect that it deserves. So I thank you really seriously for that, and for everything, honestly, that you're also doing. And thank you for saying the word class.
Yes.
Because one of the things that you mentioned when you talk about how the electorate is changing, one of the things I think this party has not done a good job of is understanding all of the class differences within those voting blocks. You cannot send somebody down just because they both speak Spanish.
Right.
You can't just send somebody because we are both Black. I mean, it is 2026. What are we doing?
I'll leave you with this because well, it was interesting thing, and I thought about this because you said class, and I was listening to it's another great book, A Latino Defectors. Paola Ramos wrote it, and she was trying to really understand how these Latinos kind of got drawn into Trump. So one of the, I think it's Oath Keepers, whatever, one of the Proud Boys, something, Afro-Dominican leader.
What's his name?
Enrique Tarrio. Proud Boys.
She like kind of like followed him, had several interviews with him. It's in the book. And, but she was thinking about this as somebody who grew up the daughter of Jorge Ramos, well-known Telemundo,
the handsome one that you were my life.
From the like great eyes.
Okay, my grandma.
I mean, you can still get it.
I'm saying, you'll know him if you've seen him.
So, I like her.
Next
she has
to Victor off of Young and Red.
Oh, okay. All right, now we'll be in the room blushing.
Victor's certified. No, it's good for y'all. Sit there and take it. It's good for you.
So that's her father, and so she's had this, and then her mother, I think, is from Spain, from another wealthier family. So she's like, I had this sort of privileged upbringing, and I grew up in Miami around the privileged, like Cuban, Mexican, and he grew up in that in the same Miami, but a different Miami. And what was it like navigating, going into because my experience as an organizer in Florida. I was put in North Florida because my Spanish was terrible, so like whatever. But my friends who were fluent, who were darker, they were like, oh, we have to figure out how to like change who's doing the conversations in Miami, because they were running right up against racism. So how did being treated that way, even though his politics were more progressive, I think at a point, but how his being treated a certain way
because of his class, created the antagonism,
and then created this sort of antagonism. And so it's just interesting how she, I haven't finished the book, but like just how she explores
and that. You would miss that entirely, and you would think it was just, he appealed to the Latino male voter, when it is more like, no, there is a deep-seated, in some cases legitimate, gripe with the classism in my local political environment, and this speaks to it and the other side doesn't. And I think that is the case across the board right now, and nobody is speaking to it very well.
And it's an irony because he, it's like Trump and all of them recruited him, so it's not necessarily like they're great on white supremacy here, but they made him feel valued and that he belonged.
And that is still politics.
So if people are coming, if you're struggling financially, and one party is saying, "Oh, let's just go out here and do these volunteer hours, and maybe we'll give you, $15 an hour," and then you've got another class another side that understands the power and influence of money in America. You put people in and I think that's what happened with some of the younger Black male
strongly agree
too. And that goes back to this whole class. We cannot underanalyze, nor can we underestimate this class piece of all of this. And going forward, I haven't seen much shift from the Democratic Party to really do a class analysis.
Hello. Well, I got some people. We should all sit down. We should talk soon. No, I'm serious, and I think it's a wonderful place. Especially, I love us. I live here, so I can say this. I love us. We would do great to have more conversations in our community here, folks, about class. So I think that's a wonderful place for us to end here in my home of Chapel Hill, North Carolina. I thank you very much. For choosing to spend your Thursday evening out here with y'all. Thank y'all, Flyleaf Books.
Hold on before we.
Oh, that's right. No, the important work. That's right.
Yes.
In the spirit. No, you go in the spirit actually of how you think we need to move.
Yes.
We have community organizations in the room with us today, tabling. Like you said, this is what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna pass it to Ann Tyndall because she'll talk a little bit more.
Come on up here.
Ann Tyndall with the circuit, which is really just an idea right now, except you all have helped make it real here tonight. We are piloting an idea. The notion is that, as we've discussed, to beat this authoritarian movement and build the truly multiracial democracy that we have been promised but have never had, we are going to have an engaged, informed, collaborative, and coordinated opposition movement. Doing all those things is really hard when our information ecosystem is at best dysfunctional and at worst poisoned. But independent bookstores are a great place to bring people together to have conversations like this one. And so, book tours happen, they're great, lots of great thinking going on right now about our political moment. But the publishing industry is designed to sell books, not to build a movement. And so what we're trying to do with the circuit is fill that gap and bring conversations like this one into rooms with organizers, movement builders, and would-be movement builders, and use these spaces to make real change. And so in that spirit, and I'm pushing the limits of our outstanding partners in Flyleaf, and Atima, who has been really, really gracious in letting us use her time to push this project. But we have a few folks here with us who are doing the hard work in community right now. And they're gonna speak 1 to 2 minutes.
Instigate, Ann. Instigate. Commit. Instigate. You got it.
Yeah, I'm not gonna ask permission.
Instigate. So
we have some folks here. We also, I put out a name tag. Some of these folks are wearing name tags. Stick around and talk about what you're gonna do now that you have talked with all of us.
there you go.
And then one final thing, you have a survey on your seat. Please fill it out and drop it in that basket. It's really short. The English region.
Y'all see the basket in the back, y'all?
But don't overthink it. Just fill it out, drop it there. But I will, I'm here to facilitate, not speak, so I will shut up. Cheryl, would you like to say a little bit about Advanced
Tell us who
Carolina?
you are and what you do. Thank you.
Good afternoon or evening. I am Cheryl Carter Ellis. I am with North Carolina Black Alliance. Thank you for the shout out. And Advanced Carolina. Our 501c3 is NC Black Alliance, where we bring together community, elected officials, whether it's state legislators, people, local officials, so that we can be that conduit to help people to see how they're navigating the system and help them to move through it. And this is with Black people. And on the 501c4, we are building independent Black political power. And that is where we're doing more of our canvassing and door to door. We also have an emerging voter program where we're working with not only students from 18 to 29, we're working with non-college students getting to the class.
Hello.
issue.
Thank you.
So if you want to know more about what we're going to be doing, please feel free to reach out to me, because we are going to start our canvassing program around August.
Okay.
We were canvassing back during the primary. We learned quite a few lessons from that. And we also canvassed and phone bank back during the municipals. So, and we were one of the
that's not, that's doing that for the small.
Doing both.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Okay, that's super important. Thank you for raising that.
Thank you.
Thanks
and
for
I
being
am
here.
leading the statewide organizing team from the Southwest down in Charlotte, Mecklenburg, the great state of Charlotte.
Yeah.
All the way to the Northeast, in our area where we know that that's the Black Belt and where those are our predominantly Black registered voters in those counties. So I'm just really excited to be
Some of whom are unaffiliated.
That's right.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you for that.
All right, we have Sandra Jones from Common Cause, North Carolina.
Hi, friends. I am Sailor Jones from Common Cause, North Carolina. I'm so grateful to be here tonight and to have met you this evening. It's truly, truly wonderful. I recall working with Cheryl at Democracy NC for many, many moons. We are very young people. Don't hold the answer. Common Cause North Carolina is a statewide organization. We work closely with Black Alliance, APRI, and other organizations in the room like Southern Coalition for Social Justice to build a multiracial democracy that works for all people. And we're really focused on some of the things you talked about in terms of building social trust in community that produces the electoral outcomes that we want, including working with our community's best neighbors alongside them all across the state to build that kind of trust that we need to have that long-term change in the state. And I'm reminded of 2019's very packed Democratic primary field. I think it was 24 people. And Cheryl and I had an event in Fuquay, I think it was. And someone came up to me, as often happens after our nonpartisan events, and asked me who I was voting for. And I said to them, whomever Black women are voting for. That continues to be my response anytime I've asked that very partisan question at an event. That comes from, and no shade to any sigmas, deltas, zetas in the room. I grew up in Warren County. All of my teachers were AKAs.
I ain't trying to be funny, but if the AKAs didn't reach all the way out to the white boys in Warren County, I am done. What kind of recruitment strategy are those dang on AKAs doing? No.
White girls.
Dang it.
But, I just talk about how the divine raised me and I was raised right. But the other answer to why following Black women goes back to, you mentioned Fannie Lou Hamer. I think of Joanne Robinson, who is lesser known in this movement. And I used to work in comms with Cheryl. And I think about if we could win this thing, we could do so with the mimeograph. I don't know if anybody in here is mimeograph years old, but Joanne Robinson essentially led and turned it from tens into tens of thousands by using the mimeograph machine to build the kinds of flyers and pamphlets I'm going to hand out to you in just 1 second. But the last thing I want to say about that is she did that through something that got brought up in many of the questions, which is that we genuinely need to be in person with each other again, to fight with each other about the right strategy, as Joanne Robinson did, and to be in person and to work through that complex conflict that comes from how do you make the coffee strong enough to roll that mimeograph machine in this moment to get 40,000 flyers out to win the Montgomery bus boycott. And if we can do that in a post-COVID environment, we may win something back. And so I'm proud to work with Cheryl and Hillary and Sarah and so many people in this room to make that happen. So thank you for letting me stand with you.
Yeah. I believe in the power of the flyer, by the way, seriously. Really
Paper works, friends, even if it's got a QR code.
That's right. I love it.
And then Jamie Train is here from Indivisible as well. I do.
Good evening, everyone. So Jamie, we have some other members from Indivisible. Maybe you're all familiar or not, but Indivisible was formed in 2016, or in the first year. Essentially, it's an organization that's out there to try to shape the democracy to serve us all, and it does that through multiple things. Some of which are electoral and political, other which are sort of building mutual aid and community together as well. So we're Indivisible Orange County. It's a national organization. If you want to know more about us, we're happy. We're always looking for more partners. I mean, this is the whole theme, right? How do we partner with different organizations to extend our reach and to get more people as well? So we have handouts and stuff as well. I'm happy to talk to you all, and thank you for sharing this tonight.
Thank you.
And if anybody's been meaning to get on our email list, I have a list here. So see me.
And I can see your name tag up there. That's Stephanie back there who says see her for signing up on the email list.
Well, I
I want to also say that I'm Danita Mason Hogans, and my nonprofit is called Bridging the Gap, and I'm a memory worker.
Show me everybody. Danita. Thank you.
Thank you. So what we do is we tie history and memory to power, to interrogate power, and it comes from the vote. We've been working with the Veterans of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee for about 10 years now, and we hold book clubs. We partner with Flyleaf Books. We buy books for the community. We focus on the Black community. We talk about how policy has shaped the way that we live. We have the second largest achievement gap in the nation here in Chapel Hill, the greatest wealth gap in the state, and we also have a parallel history that is connected to the university that we don't hear. So once a year, we hold book club sessions at the Chapel Hill Public Library to inform folks and have local folks and national authors weigh in on issues like reparation, education. And so I wanted to mention that the organization that I'm a part of is called Bridging the Gap with DMH. And we also do movement work with young people in middle and high school, and intergenerational work with women in their 80s to talk about who brought us to this moment, to make sense of it. Because I think that one of the reasons that we are away from this issue and we don't have a lot of context or understanding is because we also have a generation gap that we don't necessarily address. So this year we have a trip for our James K. Scholars that were middle and high school students. So we have Charlie Cobb, who is a member of SNCC, to design a program for us this year. And we're going to Mississippi, Alabama. We're going to all these southern states to hear from movement leaders from these middle and high school students to why the movement is important, what they did in Mississippi in voting rights. We're going to COFA. We're going to do all of that type of movement work, which we think will build a populace of voters for whom this stuff is meaningful and continue to pour into our community. So I just want to
website, email is something you want to tell us if we want to find you?
Thank you. It's Bridging the Gap with DMH.org.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.